Hey guys, it's Harrison alongside Josh. Welcome to the Awkward Sports Media Podcast. We're going to talk some hockey today. And yes, I'm repping my Team Israel hat along with my Lightning jersey. If you have a problem with it, the exit is in the top left corner of your screen from this video. Anyway, let's get to talking. Josh, it is really good to have hockey back. It was a great Lightning game last night for sure. A bit back and forth. It was nice to know that even without Andrei Vasilevskiy, the Bolts might be okay.
It's always a good thing when the Bolts win, and it's even a better thing when the Bolts win without Vasilevskiy. It kind of gives you hope that maybe that it was a lot of fatigue with this team going down the stretch of last season as opposed to age or uninspiration setting in, and maybe they'll be back fresher and hungrier than ever to try to go back for another Stanley Cup run.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the period, though, is whether or not you said this team looks rested and ready to go or not. First or third period, definitely. They played two great periods of hockey, start to finish, but sandwiched in the middle was a period where you thought they're still playing the Maple Leafs back in the playoffs. And, well, I guess it was April. I think it was April. No, late April, early May. I'm already blanking, but you get my point.
Right. Like, and in that second period, they probably could have used a timeout. Harrison, how many timeouts do you get in hockey?
Oh, you get one per game.
One per game. And obviously
You're really going to talk about this rule right now, aren't you?
when you talk about it, right? I mean, you look at one per game. If you have one, you're going to use it near the end of the game, which makes sense because obviously at the end of the game, if it's a close game, you want to go over the last couple of schemes and line changes with your players. You want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Totally get it. I have a rule proposition that I
Oh,
believe
no.
NHL
Oh, no.
better. Hockey purists will probably hate me because,
I
like,
already hate you.
like any purist in any sport at all, they don't like change. It doesn't matter what sport it is. It's not just hockey purists. It's baseball. It's basketball. It's football. It's whoever. You don't like to see change because when you see something and you've already seen it and it's good enough, it's good. But I have a rule change proposition that I think won't, quote unquote, damage the game.
No.
So in hockey, you get one timeout. I think that in hockey, you should be allowed one timeout per period. Now, you don't get to stack the timeouts per se and let them all roll over to the third period and then just get to use them, whenever you want. It's kind of like football at halftime where you got three. Guess what? You didn't use the couple in the first half. You don't get to keep them for the next half. So with this rule, I mean, if you watch hockey, if you're a big hockey fan, you watch it, you can kind of anticipate when a goal is about to happen, right? For example, the Tampa Bay Lightning game one, the Tampa Bay Lightning in game one were in their own defensive zone for about, I don't know, more than 5 to 6 plus minutes, not on a power play at times, even strength. They had not had a shot on goal in about 14 minutes. By the eighth, ninth, 10th minute of that, you don't have a shot on goal. You can clearly tell you're being outskated. If I had, per se, a timeout in the second period, I'd probably call it to kind of get everybody back on the same page. Now, again, if you only have one, that's a stupid idea. Why would you waste that timeout in the second period? But if you have three and you have one per period, and you know it's going to expire at the end of the period, and you're on a stretch like that where you might be struggling and you might want to get the focus back, I don't see why you wouldn't use that timeout if you had it. Now, obviously, it's hard. There's very little. You can't really back up a rule change with evidence when we haven't seen it happen before. So obviously, I'm at a disadvantage there with history and things like that behind what has already come to be, which is the sport of hockey. But I do think that if you did make it one timeout per period, you can kind of get your team to focus back up. You can kind of find a way to shift the momentum during a period, maybe at the end of a period, right before somebody scores, or to kind of just give your team a little bit of a breather. Now, with that being said, this is how I think this rule would work. You would take, obviously, if the play was live, for example, if you in hockey, it's the other team if you commit a power play here, so let me see if I get this right. When there's a power play going on or there's a delayed penalty, by the offensive team, or is it the defense? Whenever it changes possession, it stops play. Is that correct?
What happens in a delayed penalty? You get to continue the play, like the team that will go on the power play, as long as they have the puck,
Right.
they can keep going, which is a
Right.
lot of times you'll see them pull the goalie, go for the 6-on-5. But the
Right.
second the opposing team, the team that will go on the penalty kill, gets the puck, the whistle, the play is blown dead, and you'll have to reset, go for a face-off with the power play and the penalty going underway, 2 minutes, 4-minute double, 5-minute major, whatever it is.
Right. And you just explained that far better than I could. So thank you for that explanation. Basically, what you just explained is how I think a live game timeout would kind of work. For example, so obviously, if you're on defense and you're not possessing the puck per se, you can't just call a timeout to stop play while the other team has it. It's kind of like basketball rules where basketball you can't call a timeout on defense. You have to have the ball to call a timeout. Because if someone's setting up a play or a fast break, you can't just call a timeout to stop something like that. You have to have it in order to do so. So I feel like the way that would work is if you were calling a timeout in this regard, because the way timeouts currently work in the NHL is you wait for a stoppage, and that's when the timeout is implemented. Whether it be a TV or whatever, if you want to use it, you still have to wait for a stoppage for something like that to happen. If I were a coach and I was calling a timeout, I would, if there was official nearby, let them know next time we possess the puck, I want a stoppage to use that timeout. Or if the official's on the other side of the ice, maybe like an arm wave or a signal like the way they do in football for a fair catch, or something that gets the official attention. Now I get it. That isn't always seen, but we have, again, in other sports, seen many scenarios of coaches running down the sideline in football, trying to call timeout to ice the kicker, and the official doesn't see it. It's still something that can still get the attention of the official. So that's how I feel like it would work. That's how I feel like you could implement the timeout. And I do think per period, if you had one, they would be used, especially in a sense where you feel like your team, the pressure is getting put on your team, and you just need to call a timeout to regroup.
I just want to start off with, I very much get your argument. It makes sense when you put it out there. I'm not sure if I fully get how you can start it in the same way as if you're on a delayed penalty. I get the idea that you have to have the puck to call timeouts, but I also don't see really a lot of scenarios, even when you have it. I know right now I'm basing it off the idea of they play as if they don't have it. Totally fair. But I still don't see a lot of scenarios where they're willing to stop it, keep going. There's still other instances. Hockey has a lot of play stoppages. There's TV timeouts. Every time there's probably several face-offs per, well, there's at least 30 per game, if not more. So I'm trying to form my words here, as you can tell.
Like I was trying to form mine, trying to explain the whole power play.
The only situation I can think of that it would really be used. Let's say it's like a 5-on-3. You're really trying to make sure the play is set up. And remember, 5-on-3s, obviously they happen, but they're not, you can go several games without facing a 5-on-3 in any scenario. That's the only time I'd really see it. Because even if you just go on the power play 5-on-4, you're just going to get out there and just keep going. Whether you're down, whether you're up, whether it's tied. And there's so many other scenarios they could draw up plays. You're on the bench. You're still 2 rotations away. Like, let's say the third line's out there. You might want to send someone out where you plan it. Go over, okay, when your line goes out there, here's what I want you to do. There's always stuff going on the bench. I don't know if you really need once per period a situation where you can need to blow the whistle and send everybody to the bench at once to draw up a big play. You really don't even see that in other sports unless it's within the final minutes and you're losing and you need to draw up a play.
Yeah, and I get your point about drawing up plays. I also think, though, you would use it more in a sense, right? Because shifts can be, you can have players on the ice for a number of minutes per shift, and sometimes you can't make the change, and if you're getting, beat by the other team in a sense, but they haven't quite scored, you can see that your team's reeling a little bit. Maybe it's not just to call a play. Maybe it's just to give them a breather.
I mean, you say that too, but also what about a scenario? You said, like, let's say they go 8 minutes without shots. You definitely do not go 8 minutes without an extended pause in the game, whether or not it's a commercial break or something that can halt, that in theory could halt the momentum of the other team, and they just keep going. Is blowing the whistle and taking a 30-second timeout really going to get everyone reset to go take a shot? You're almost like, it's almost the same logic with the TV timeouts of, glad that's over. I can reset for a minute. Oh, no, wait, they're still in our zone the entire time, taking 15 shots when we haven't had any. By the way, referencing the fact the Lightning went like 15 minutes without a shot last night in the second period. That was rough.
That's where I got my inspiration.
That's where it came from.
That's where I got my inspiration for this rule change, where it's like, yeah, I get the point, like TV timeouts, they stop it, but like the timeouts that you have, you can control when you want to use them, right? So like, yeah, you could have a TV timeout come up, happen to be like perfect timing where it ends up working out. We're like, oh, thank goodness it's over. But maybe you just came back out of a TV timeout to your point and you're still getting shelled. Now I can use that timeout coming out of that break to create another break if I still have that one timeout for the period, even if we just had one and you still don't like what you see. So to that point, that's where I think that it would still be something that is viable and something that, as we saw last time with the Lightning, they could have used in the second period.
Perhaps. I still see it as a scenario where you take the pause and then it just kind of keeps going. Momentum just has to naturally shift in hockey. It's gonna happen where, and I'm not defending going almost an entire period without a shot. It is not defensible. But it sometimes just takes the natural shift. It takes finally getting that shot to get everything to swing the other way. It doesn't, stopping the play for half a minute is probably not gonna make it change.
Right, and I mean that goes back to the point that I said, like, again, I can't prove it because we've never seen it. It's something that like we'd have to see. But I do think it would be something that like it'd be interesting to see. Like if they implemented it, I think it'd be good for the game. Obviously, we wouldn't know though for sure unless it actually happened.
Perhaps not, but there's a lot of crazy ways you could change things in the NHL. I know you have another crazy idea you definitely want to present here. I know that, and I'm already dreading when you bring it up, so I might as well just introduce it for you. Just say it while I pinch my nose.
Okay, all right. So again, I'm not the diehard hockey fan here. I've watched other sports. I've grown up around other sports prior to hockey, but I think,
and for context, I grew up around it, raised by Canadians, so
for me, it's
Canadian fans.
I think when it comes to the offside rule in hockey, I think it's a great rule. I think it needs to be called live, and I think it needs to stay that way. I don't like the idea of going to a review to review offsides.
Why though? This one I genuinely do not understand.
I just think it's bad for the game, and the reason why I think it's bad for the
game. Why
is
reviewing an offside bad for the game?
Because let's just say, I mean, you can throw up a number of scenarios, right? But when are offsides reviewed? Offsides are reviewed when a goal is scored. I think any scenario like that, where you are going back to review a goal that had something to do with a blue line that happens, I don't know how many feet away the blue line is from the actual goal line in hockey, whatever that number is something that it's very, I mean, you could be an away fan, you could be a home fan. It robs us of a highlight at the very least. For so to speak, it could rob us of a fantastic goal. It could rob us of any kind of goal. The point is, it's only coming into play when we're taking a goal off the board. It doesn't apply when, for example, somebody might be offsides, a goal doesn't get scored, and then maybe another penalty happens thereafter. Nobody's going back to review an offsides, even though they might have actually been offsides. It's only being reviewed to take a goal off the board.
That's the point. That's literally the point.
But if
nothing happens, then it's whatever. You didn't get away with being offside. It shouldn't be where you break a rule and get rewarded with a goal. That's why we're still debating Brett Hull being in the crease. 25 years later, I know they changed the rule on that one where you can kind of be in the crease, but you are not supposed to be rewarded for breaking, for not following the rules with a goal that could decide a big game.
But hear me out. So let's say somebody is offsides, and then once the puck's like in the zone or whatever, and it's offsides, another penalty happens. Now, a goal's not scored, but another penalty happens on, say, the defensive team. Are they going to go back and review offsides then to like
maybe they should?
But would they though? So like you can break the rule and get away with it in certain circumstances. But
now, are you saying that the team that was offside goes on the power play or is in the penalty kill? I want clarification.
It could be either way. But the point.
No, depending on the scenario matters.
Okay, but. Okay, so let's just play the scenario then. Let's just say the team that goes offsides goes on the power play.
And it should be reviewed because then you're not going to go offsides and get rewarded with a power play because you violated a rule before the other team did. Offset the whole thing, do a face-off from the circle just beyond the blue line in the neutral zone.
And I get that point, right? Like I get the point of you broke a rule, you shouldn't be rewarded for it. If you broke the rule, then shouldn't it be on the official to make that call like in real time? Because
yes, but that's why we have reviews in other sports.
But I agree. Like the thing I guess I could closely compare it to, and again I would be comparing it to another sport, is like passing
no call.
Is to like pass interference, right? Where pass interference is not a reviewable penalty.
And now. I think it should be.
And 1 year they went to it and they made it reviewable. And it was a complete and utter disaster. And it, took big plays off the board. And nobody ended up liking it. And but literally within the year, they repealed it like, all right, this is just not working.
Okay, well, tell you what, if a big play was scored because of a pass interference call, then you shouldn't get the big play.
No, and I agree. Like the logic of it makes sense. You shouldn't be breaking rules and you shouldn't be rewarded for breaking rules. I get the logic behind it, right? But in my opinion, what I'm saying is if that's where the officials come in, and that's the beauty of the imperfection in sports. Officials can miss calls, and if they miss an offsides penalty, or you have to go to review, it's probably because it was like inches. And you could be in the offensive zone for over 2 minutes without the puck going back out, without even realizing you have to tag up. And at that point, like you said, you broke the rule. But at that point, how much does that come into the play? And now we're taking away a goal or something else that happens after the fact that could happen minutes after the fact.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with it. Because we're so laid strict in
minutes after the fact. At that point, it probably got cleared several times over. They came back in onsides and scored. Like, a goal caused by an offside, or that happened because a team went offside, is going to happen within seconds, probably within like 15 seconds at most. Moving around. Even by then, I don't even think it would take 15 seconds. Typically, it's probably within 10. If you're already talking minutes, then they've probably already cleared, come back in, likely onside, and it's at that point, it's a moot point.
Sure, but in the event that they're in there for 30, whatever the time frame may be, obviously offsides can apply. And if they miss the call, they miss the call. And if something happens after the fact, whether it had to do with the offsides or it didn't, if they missed it, I think that's on the official for getting it wrong. And the team that was offsides now shouldn't be punished because the official missed the call and they ended up scoring a goal off of that. If that's on the official, I don't think that's on the team per se. And I don't think it's good for the game to take goals off the board, even if they did break the That's why I think the offsides rule is crucial. You shouldn't be offsides. But if the official is on it, which we've seen offsides called
Okay.
in real time.
Okay, so here's my question. Should just no plays at all be reviewable in sport? Take away replay in football, take away replay in the NBA and MLB, and do we just get rid of replay altogether? Why just offsides?
So in hockey, that's the only in this sport particularly, right? That's the one that's reviewable, right? Or it's the only one that's not for the rule. But what else can you review in hockey?
I mean, just for the sake of it, I mean, first of all, well, too many men is not reviewable,
Okay.
as we know from my bias of pointing this out right now. There's a lot of things that can be reviewed. Goalie interference was just reviewed the other night. I mean, let's just pull this up. Reviewable play.
But why is too many men not reviewable?
I think it should be.
Well, I understand that, but why do you think the NHL does not have that as a reviewable penalty? Is basically what I'm asking.
That is something I do not have an answer to, and in the end, I think it should be.
Yeah, that's fair, and I get your point. Like, yeah, certain things should be reviewed. I understand that certain things should be reviewed, and I understand that when you review certain things, those can take away plays. But as something as little as this guy's skate was 2 inches over the line, we didn't see it. We're going to go now 45 seconds, 30 seconds later to a review after somebody scored. They went through the whole celebration. A big moment just happened. Now we have to wipe that away because somebody was inches in front of the blue line before the puck got there. Something like that, I feel like, is something that could fall under you have to see that live as opposed to making that reviewable, because I don't think that makes that big of a difference in the play, is what I'm saying. If it's that much offsides, the official will see it in real time. If the puck is an inch,
not always, clearly.
Not always. There's never going to be an always argument, but I think a majority of the time, if it's that close where the official can't see it in real time, is it really making that big of a difference to now go and review it? I don't think
if a team if it's game 7 of the Stanley Cup final and it's your team that gives up the goal because of an offside call,
right?
You're going to want that to be reviewable. I'm going to throw your bias in there for a moment.
I completely agree. And that's why we've had notorious games in sports with missed calls. We had an umpire botch a perfect game. We had the tuck rule in football.
Yeah, and Armando Galarraga's perfect game is why there's now replay in baseball, even if it took about 4 or 5 years after the fact.
Yeah, and they're in certain contexts, replay is good for sports. I completely agree. Making it out, getting that can make a big difference in the game. You get an out, you didn't get an out. That's progress in the game, as opposed to like the puck is an inch over the blue line before the skate gets there. The skate's there before the puck gets there by a matter of a millimeter or centimeter or whatever it might be. We could argue all day whether it makes a huge difference or it doesn't. I personally believe that doesn't make that big of a difference if you can't see it in real time. If you can see it in real time, you're going to call it.
I think that's not always the case, but we're just going to agree to disagree for now. This is never going to come to a conclusion. We're moving on to Connor Bedard. That's probably the even bigger thing. Well, no, it's not probably the bigger thing. It's the biggest thing in hockey news right now. Connor Bedard made his debut and he faced off against Sidney Crosby. Both of the next ones faced off against each other. I don't know if you saw that video with the ref came up and said, Crosby, welcome back for another season. I'm paraphrasing here. So if someone tries to call me out for saying I didn't say it correctly, I'm paraphrasing. Yeah, the guy then looked to Bedard and said, welcome to the National Hockey League. Thank you. All right, guys, have a good game. That's a big deal. On live television, you get the mic'd up moments where the ref welcomes both the greatness of the 21st century so far with the next greatness. And for those who say, Connor McDavid better, as much as I agree, it's a moot point. Sidney Crosby.
Bedard has also played one game, and he's in his second game right now, and he just scored his first goal.
Okay, but you also got to promote the next generation of players. There's going to be a lot of hockey fans who grow up idolizing this kid.
No, completely agree. What I'm saying is to the point about McDavid and Bedard. Like, of course, McDavid is ahead of Bedard right
Well, I
now.
was saying, well, I was more doing that in context of Crosby for the idea of the greatest of the 21st century, just for someone to be like, okay, well,
For the record,
McDavid's better. Well, that's a moot
approve.
point.
Yeah, for the record, I completely approve of the Bedard, like all this hype around Bedard. I get that. Completely approve of that. That was the point I'm making. Was like the McDavid, Bedard. Like, if anybody out there,
that kind of got a little off context there, and I apologize for that. I was doing that in reference of Sidney Crosby. For anyone who tries to jump into the comments and goes, "Wow, you call Crosby the best, McDavid better," it's not the point. Either way, Crosby's one of the greatest to ever play.